What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a great Thanksgiving time. It's been a great time of deer hunting. I personally had the experience of helping two young men, both 14-year-old boys. They had never killed a deer, and I assisted each one in killing their first buck. And I've been a hunter for a long time. I absolutely love deer hunting. Love it. I mean, I dream about it. And for me, I'd never help someone else do something they had not done in deer hunting, and to just help two young boys they're good men. They love the Lord, they love his creation, and they want to shed some blood out here. Such an amazing experience. It will forever be one of my fondest memories, and I hope to help many more young men kill their first buck and continue hunting. And then I've been also working with my son. He's taken a shot at 3 different bucks, missed all 3 of them so far. He's only 7, but there's no quitting that boy. And there's many a time we've been out there and it's 25, 27 degrees in the morning and it's cold, and he has the intestinal fortitude to stay out there, be in the cold, despite how hard it is on his little body. So it's just been a lot of fun for me lately, and I've got a lot of things going at work, and it's good. And I just have to say that God has just been, he's just blessed me so much. He's blessed me in the eternal and the spiritual of saving my soul and loving me through and pulling me through my dark times. But he's just given me so much. And this Thanksgiving, I feel like I was just really blown away when I look back on what God has done in my life, really in the last 2 years. So I'm very, very thankful, man. I'm very blessed. And, I know I don't deserve it. So, Psalm 53. Today is going to be a little bit longer of a video. I hope you stick around for it. If you're new to this channel, a little bit about me. I'm a United States Marine, retired law enforcement, and I have found that the way for me and you to stay fast in the Lord is to stay in the Psalms. They're just, some people don't have to do that. Some people don't want to do that. But for me, it's where I really find my rest. And the Psalms cause me to pull all over the Bible, which you'll see today. So I just love it. It's the greatest of all poetry, and it's deeper than poetry, as it is poetry. I don't want to ramble. Let's jump into it. So I've been in Psalm 53, and I have really seen how critical the placement of Psalm 53 is, in between 52 and 54. And I want to show you that today because it's special. It's unique. Now, Psalm 53 is almost Psalm 14. If you look at Psalm 14 and 53, there's almost no difference. Okay, it's the same psalm. David just did it twice. And there's a reason for that. So they both start out, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt and have done abominable iniquity. There is none who does good. Now, 53 sticks to the word God when speaking of God. It does not deviate from that. And what I have come to understand through my study is that this particular psalm is meant more for people that are non-Israelite. While Psalm 14, it starts out and it says God, the fool has said in his heart there is no God. It then transitions to what we would say as Yahweh, but in your Bible it may say the Lord, capital Lord, and that is the unspeakable name of God. So it gets extremely holy for an Israelite to read Psalm 14 because of who identifies God as. It is a name for God, but it is, even as we say Yahweh, that's really not his name. We don't know what his name is, in that we cannot understand how it's even pronounced. That's why I believe in Revelation 19, when it talks about the king returning, when Jesus Christ comes back, it says he had on his thigh a name written that no one knew except himself. And I think that that is just so beautiful and so powerful. And he comes back slaying and stacking bodies. But Psalm 53. Okay, now check this out. Psalm 52 is a contemplation of David when Doeg the Edomite went and told Saul and said to him, David has gone to the house of Ahimelech. It's really easy to just jump over that superscription, that little preface to the psalm, and ignore it. But it is so important. So 52 is David thinking and meditating about this time when Doeg, I call him Doug, the Edomite, snitched out some people, namely Ahimelech and other priests, because Ahimelech was a priest. When he let Saul know that Ahimelech and his priests were assisting David. Okay? Psalm 53 is a contemplation of David about a situation following this one with Doug. In Psalm 54, it's a contemplation of David when the Ziphites went and said to Saul, is David not hiding with us? So these Ziphites, who are Jewish people, they're the tribe of Judah in a little town called Moan. It's Moan. It's like right next to Bethlehem, where David grew up. So, this is just like a little tiny community next door to where David grew up. It calls them Ziphites, and you think they're like a different people group. No, they're of the tribe of Judah, just like David. And they betrayed David and went to Saul and said, hey, Saul, is David not hiding with us? Like, he's over in this cave right here. And you have these situations where David is constantly, he's around this mountain, and he's living on this mountain, and Saul has chased him around it on 2 different occasions. Well, that's the land of the Ziphites, and it's a wilderness area. And two different occasions, the Ziphites go to Saul and snitch David out and say, he's in our backyard, buddy. And they betray him. It's his own people betraying him. The tribe of Judah betraying King David. And see if you can think of a time in the future where Judah betrays the king. Judas and Jesus, right? Okay, so Psalm 52, it's about Doug the Edomite. And what happens here is David is, he has gone to see Ahimelech, a priest. Ahimelech gives David Goliath's sword. David took that dude's head off his body. And he was unarmed at the time, and Ahimelech said, there's the sword of Goliath. And David said, there's none like it. Give it to me. And he takes it. Well, this guy Doug the Edomite, he was a very rich and wealthy man and a powerful man with access to King Saul. And he goes to Saul and tattletales on Ahimelech that he helped David. And so what Saul does is Saul orders all of his men around him to kill Ahimelech, the priest, as well as, I think, 85 others. And the men refuse. They refuse this wicked order from King Saul. And then Doug, the Edomite, says, I'll do it. And right then and there, he hacks 85 priests to death. And then goes to their little city that they lived in and kills all the other men, women, and children. Horrible, terroristic act. Got to make sure I'm still recording here. Cool. My phone gives me trouble, but not today. So, Psalm 52 is all about what Doug the Edomite has done. This horrible act where it was an act of betrayal. He betrayed Ahimelech, but he also betrayed David. And then he's a murderer. I mean, this guy's a vicious, wicked dude. And so Psalm 52 is really all about the deceit and the destruction of Doeg the Edomite. And that's why that superscription exists there. And if you want to read about it, you need to go to 1 Samuel 22. And really, chapter 52, 53, and 54, it's really all covered there in 1 Samuel, about 19 or 20, up through 26. And I've gained a good understanding of these Psalms by reading those chapters of 1 Samuel. So Psalm 53, back to this, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. What is that all about? I think that we have a, what's the word here? I've always, known this phrase in the Psalms, and to me, it's always spoken about just the pure atheist out there that says there's not a God in heaven. We evolved from primordial goo billions of years ago. And I'm like, this Psalm's for you, buddy. Psalm 53. It's also the same as Psalm 14, like I said. But it's not, okay? I mean, in a huge, large sense, yes, it does speak to atheism. But when you get down into the nitty-gritty of this psalm, it's speaking to Saul and this other guy, Nabal. So if you jump back over to 1 Samuel and you go to where Nabal, David asked Nabal for some food. Nabal was a rich man. He had lots of stuff. And David and his men were on the road, on the run, and they're hungry. And they asked Nabal for some sustenance. And this guy says, who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? Like, I don't even know the guy. Which, he's a liar. He absolutely knew who David was. Everybody knew who David was. He had recently killed Goliath, the Philistine, and his fame was great. So what happens is Nabal is struck with something like a stroke, and then 10 days later, God strikes him dead. The dude's done. And Nabal's wife, Abigail, this beautiful, lovely young lady, ends up supplying David and his men with a bunch of food, takes care of them, and then David makes her his wife, okay? I don't want to get into all of the morality of David and women at this point in time, but the dude was hungry for some companionship, I guess. And so, yeah, David had a problem with women. So you got this whole thing with Nabal, and he's dead, and Abigail has really blessed David and now become his wife. And you've got this situation where David goes into the tent of Saul, and Saul is asleep. This is the second time David has had a chance to kill Saul, okay? The first time was David's in a cave, and Saul goes in the cave in the land of Ziph, the Ziphites, right there in Judah. Saul's trying to go to the bathroom, and David is so close that he cuts off a piece of Saul's cloak while he's going to the bathroom, and then he confronts Saul and shows him, like, look, dude, I had you in my crosshairs. I got so close to you, I cut off a piece of your robe. I didn't kill you. And David's thing was, Saul is anointed by God as the king. Even though David's anointed as king, he recognized that it is up to God to remove him, not me. It will not be by my hand that I take the kingship away from Saul. That is up to the Lord. And David was encouraged, like, by his men, like, kill Saul. He's done you all this wrong. You got to take his life every time you get a chance. And David refused to do that. And he just really trusted in God as his strength. As he says so many times in the Psalms, it's the Lord who wins my battles, not me. So a second time, David has a chance at Saul's life, and he finds himself inside Saul's tent. Saul's taking a nap, and what David does is he takes his spear, and he takes his jug of water as evidence that I was that close to you, buddy. I could have killed you again. And so you get to this point here in 1 Samuel 26, and David and Saul are having a confrontation with each other. David calls out to Saul in verse 17 of chapter 26. He says, "Then Saul knew David's voice and said, 'Is that your voice, my son David?' David said, 'It is my voice, my lord, O king.' And he said, 'Why does my lord thus pursue his servant? For what have I done, or what evil is in my hand? Now therefore, please, let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If the Lord has stirred you up against me, let him accept an offering. But if it is the children of men, may they be cursed before the Lord. For they have driven me out this day from sharing in the inheritance of the Lord, saying, Go serve other gods. So now do not let my blood fall to the earth before the face of the Lord. For the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea,'" like he's calling himself a flea, "as when one hunts a partridge in the mountains." So David's like, if it's God that has stirred you up to kill me, then fine. But if it's men that are causing you and saying things to you to want to come kill me, then, you're coming out to chase a flea out in the mountains, buddy. You're wasting your time. Saul is convicted by what David says. In verse 21, then Saul said, "I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will harm you no more, because my life was precious in your eyes this day." So he recognizes, you could have killed me, David, and I realize that my life is precious in your eyes. This is the second time David could have smoked him, right? And then he says, "Indeed, I have played the fool and erred exceedingly." And David answered and said, "Here's the king's spear. Let one of the young men come over and get it." So, back to Psalm 53. Remember, King Saul called himself a fool. Psalm 53, it says, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God." It's not as much about outright atheism in this psalm as we in the West generally want to think it. I think that you got to put on a Israelite mentality when you read this. Even though when it talks about God, it is using non-Israelite terms when speaking about God, but you have to get down to the meat of the story about what's really going on here. Ultimately, if you do not recognize the Davidic dynasty, if you do not recognize the anointed of the Lord, and if you do not give your allegiance to the anointed of the Lord, you are a fool. That is the meat and the meat and potatoes of Psalm 53. And it shows you that because of the placement in here, where in 52, you've got this situation with Doug the Edomite, and then it jumps in the story, just like in 1 Samuel, to the situation where David and Saul have this confrontation, and Saul calls himself a fool. He was a fool because David was anointed by God to be king of Israel. And David was not willing to kill Saul because he was anointed by God to be king of Israel. It would ultimately be Saul falling in battle against the Philistines and being killed that would let David ascend the throne. Because David knew that it would be God who set up his throne, not himself. He would not take the throne by force or by violence. He would take it by God's just all-powerful plan. And so I want to show you something else that's cool here. So in Psalm 54, you've got this situation where it's a contemplation of David when the Ziphites went and said to Saul, "Is David not hiding with us?" This is speaking of the situation with David now in the cave. Like, it backs up. 54 backs up from Psalm 53 to this scene where Saul's going to the bathroom in the cave. And there's this verse here, verse 7, and David says, "For he has delivered me out of all trouble, and my eye has seen its desire upon my enemies." Now, it's so easy to just read that verse and say, you know, David's just being poetic, right? God's delivered me out of all my troubles, and my eye has seen its desire on my enemies. It's like, what does that even mean? Okay. And then when you try to like make that applied to you, which you can in some senses, okay? I'm not saying you can't. Definitely when he says the Lord is my helper, the Lord is with those who uphold my life. Yes, that does apply to you at times in your life. But David is talking very specifically here. So, my eye has seen its desire upon my enemies. What is this talking about? When Saul was in this cave, David cut off a piece of his robe. He tells that to Saul. He says, and David said to Saul, why do you listen to the words of men who say, indeed, David seeks your harm? Look, this day your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave, and someone urged me to kill you, but my eye spared you. And I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. He says, but my eye spared you. And look what he says in Psalm 54. My eye has seen its desire upon my enemies. I guess what I'm trying to say in all of this today is that the Psalms are intricately linked into specific things in the Word of God. And they're so special when you find them. Before my study in this, I hadn't found that. And finding it really brings a lot to me. I hope that it means something to you. I feel like I'm kind of scatterbrained about all this because it is a lot. It's a lot of intricately woven stuff. Hopefully I haven't completely screwed all this up today. But these Psalms are so special. And the ultimate like meat of everything here is you cannot oppose the anointed of the Lord. Only a fool would do that. And King Saul was a fool to oppose David and seek to kill David. Just like King Herod later on at the birth of Christ. You know, he goes out there like Doug the Edomite and kills all the little boys of Bethlehem. He's a fool. He's trying to destroy the son of David. He's trying to destroy Jesus Christ, who is David's genetic grandson. And if you want to be wise, belong to the Anointed One. If you want to be a wise man, give your allegiance to the Lord's anointed, Jesus Christ. If you want to be wise, be his servant, the servant of the King. That's all that I want to be. I just want to, I want to be the servant of the Messiah, the son of David. That's all I can do. I should probably just shut my mouth now. That's all I want to do.